What is going on, all of you blue bombers and red Z-Saber wielders out there in the world? I am Mega Am, so thank you for checking out this video. Whether you are a new or returning viewer, appreciate you taking the time to be here. And today I'm going to be talking about a game that I played recently on my off time outside of streams, and that was Mega Man Zero 2. Now, a couple years ago, as of this recording, just a little over, I played the first game and I had my issues with it. And I figured, you know what, I wanted a quick game to play before I inevitably start Persona 5 very soon as of this recording. And I figured, you know what, let me play another game in the Mega Man Zero ZX collection, which I did buy on Switch a few years ago as of now. And I figured, you know what, let me give the second game a shot and like slowly go through these in order. I wasn't going to play all of them all the way through because I didn't want to experience burnout, kind of like I did with the Mega Man X Legacy collection when I played those originally. And so I'm just to clarify, I'm playing the collection version here of Mega Man Zero 2. So the way I'm going to kind of go about this is kind of do like a non-spoiler part at the very beginning. That'll probably be most of the video, and then go into more spoilers after the fact. I will have timestamps and I'll be able to say when that happens. So overall, I enjoyed this game a lot more than the first one, but let's get into why. Now, this game, it's interesting. So these games were originally released on the Game Boy Advance, the first 4 at the very least. I believe. I know at least the first 2 were, so definitely correct me if I'm wrong on any of those in the comments below. But they were also re-released here on the Nintendo Switch and other platforms in the Mega Man Zero ZX collection. But yeah, these were originally on Game Boy Advance, and they very much follow a similar layout to the Mega Man X games. You kind of use those games as their basis, but the whole point is that you're playing as Zero. I'm going to load my previous save file here just because it starts like a new game plus, so you're not going to see any spoilers from the story at all at the very beginning here. But essentially, yes, as you can see here, we're getting a good synopsis here, right? This takes place a year after the first Mega Man Zero. So essentially, there's a whole story in that game. I won't spoil anything about that, where you play as Zero. This is supposed to be the same Zero from the Mega Man X series. He has a little bit of a different design here, but I believe it's supposed to be the same Zero. Like I said, correct me in the comments if I'm wrong about this. But essentially, there's this whole group called Neo Arcadia, who are essentially this big resistance trying to protect the existence of the humans. And so there's a whole kind of power struggle between all of these. There's this legendary event that's talked about happening in the past. After the whole Sigma thing with the Maverick Wars and X, takes place after the X series. There's the whole Elf Wars, which we'll get into in a bit why they're called the Elf Wars. But there's a whole outbreak between humans and Reploids. So now there's this Neo Arcadia, this kind of safe haven for the humans, and the resistance base here, who Zero is kind of helping in a way to not become non-existent, right? So essentially he's kind of fighting generally for that side, although he kind of does things on his own too. Let me actually, what am I doing? Let me pull up the gameplay on the other screen so I can actually see it in full screen. But if you're familiar with Mega Man, some of these menus here may look pretty similar. Now, there are a few distinctions between this series and at least this entry in the series and the Mega Man X games. So of course, like I said, you're playing as Zero. Now, you can play as Zero in some of the Mega Man X games, but here, Zero has a gun, he has a regular blaster, and he has a Z-Saber as well, which was kind of his iconic weapon from the X series, and you can use it here as well. Now, what's interesting is that in these games, you have a main weapon and a sub-weapon, and there are different types of unlockable weapons. As you can see here, right now, I only have the blaster and the Z-Saber. However, you can change between the two of them on the fly, so you can have 2 weapons equipped. There are a couple other weapons, one of which is the shield boomerang that returns from the original Mega Man Zero, and the other, I believe, is new, which is the kind of the chain, what do they call it, the chain gun or something like that? Correct me on that naming in the comments below if you can. Where you can actually use that to grapple, and in some levels, it's actually, I don't know if it's quite mandatory, but it's definitely like, it's definitely very useful for navigating terrain, as well as it has a long range for hitting enemies for far away, and it has like 8 directional movement, so you can aim in different directions. Not full free movement, but this was a Game Boy Advance game, so gotta keep the limitations in mind. Now this tutorial level is just like Zero kind of, exploring the desert on his own, and you're just kind of dealing with waves of enemies here. So of course, Zero has a health screen. Like I said, you can either use the blaster, which you can charge up here, or you can use the Z-Saber, which you can also charge up. It kind of does this. Actually, I don't think I've unlocked it yet, but there is a way to upgrade it. So there's a kind of a flashy charge move you do when you fully charge it there. But yeah, so it's kind of your run and gun Mega Man on the base surface. Like in terms of the core gameplay, it is like your kind of especially Mega Man X. There's dashing in this game like Mega Man X. There's also like wall clinging like in that game as well. So there's a lot going on here. You can get health pickups and other ammo pickups as well. So it's really fun. I love using the Z-Saber. It feels really good to use in this game. It is honestly my default weapon. Whereas the blaster is also, it's good to have both utilized. This is honestly my classic combo because you get, some range with the, blaster, and you get more up close and personal melee attacks with the Z-Saber. Now here, I definitely tend to use, against these mini bosses, I tend to use my blaster here. I forget what it's called, but I tend to use that with these bosses because it's hard to kind of hit them up close, at least without taking damage there. As you can probably tell, I'm not great at Mega Man, but I definitely found myself liking this game a lot more in terms of the difficulty than the original game. The original game was very hard. What also makes this game a little different, as we're probably going to see in a bit, is the fact that this game is mission-based, like the original as well. So essentially how that works is that instead of having kind of like the typical like 8 Robot Master or Maverick selection like in the classic Mega Man series or X, you kind of have a version of that in this game. It's a lot more like that than in the original. In the sequel, they kind of went back to a little bit of that kind of mission select style, but they're mainly based on like specific objectives and missions. Like, for example, there are some missions in this game, I won't spoil too much, but like there's one where you have to like rescue a bunch of cargo that the enemy's trying to steal, or you have to rescue certain resistance soldiers as you go through. So it's definitely, there's more to it than just defeat the Robot Master. Now every level has a boss at the end, at least I think. There might be like 1 or 2 exceptions in the game, but fortunately it doesn't follow the same structure. So if you ever found that like Mega Man, classic Mega Man or X kind of had too formulaic of a kind of a level design or level progression going on, then you may like these games more because they're more of a mission structure. Now, this game definitely abandons a bit of that like free-form mission structure like the original Zero had, but I think the trade-off is worth it because like in that game, if you failed a mission, you wouldn't, from what I remember, I could be wrong, correct me on this if I'm wrong in the comments, I don't think you could restart the mission at all. Like I think you had to beat it. Otherwise, what'll happen is if you get a game over on a mission, you just straight up like lose. Like that is it. Now here I'm going to use the Z-Saber a little bit because that'll be useful here. But like, it was one of those really annoying features because it was just like, if you got a game over on a mission, you literally, you couldn't get a game over on a mission. Otherwise you had to pretty much hard reset the game. And if you wanted to complete every mission. And like, I think there might've been endings tied around the different missions. I could be wrong on that. But it was definitely like, I remember this boss giving me so much trouble. That's the satisfying thing about Mega Man is like, once you figure out boss patterns, it's like, it feels so rewarding to be able to beat some of these bosses without getting hit too much or losing too much health. You are ranked after every one of these missions. So I'm not very good at these rankings. It's based on, so there are different factors here. Oh wow, that is the best ranking I ever got on a mission. I guess I'm just getting better at the game. It's ranked based on your completion. You can see the right column has the points, the left column just has like the measurement there. So the mission's 100% complete. The faster you complete it, the more points you get. Number of enemies you defeat, the number of damage you take, the number of retries you use. So I didn't use up any lives on that, I didn't use up any retries. And then elves, which elves are another thing that make the Mega Man Zero series unique to X and the classic games, is there are these things called cyber elves, which essentially can give you like upgrades and boosts. So for example, if you're familiar with classic Mega Man, there are those sub tanks you can get. I mean, X has it as well. There are some cyber elves in this game and the original. I think probably most, or if not all of the Zero games, that'll give you an extra sub tank. There are some that'll refill your health. There are some that'll like take away half of the boss's health bar. There'll be some that like pretty much create bursts of bullets and stuff like that. Oh no, Zero, he's dead. Can't believe it. How many times has Zero died in this series? Can't even count at this point. So yeah, it's like the cyber elves are definitely a unique aspect. I will say, I didn't find myself using them too much until near the end. All right. I won't say who this is. This is only gonna make sense if you've played the original. This is a returning character from the original game. So there is definitely some connected lore between games, which the X series kind of had. Like they reference like events and of course Sigma and all the ongoing stuff, but I feel like so far these Zero games are the ones to really kind of nail like the consistent flow of narrative. And I've only played these 2, but like the ending of the first game has a huge impact. It leads right into this game. They make it known within the plot, so I definitely appreciate that as well. So this is a new character. This is El Piso, who is the new commander of the Resistance Army, who originally worked for Neo Arcadia, then defected and decided to help the Resistance. So that's kind of a new character there. I won't spoil what happens with any of these characters until the spoiler section, of course. But now this girl, I think it's Ciel. I don't know. Let me know. I guess I pronounce it Ciel. Let me know in the comments below how you pronounce her name. She was in the original, and she kind of helped lead the Resistance in the original game. And she's still here. She's more of a researcher, though. So she studies like the power of the Cyber Elves, and her whole thing is trying to use the Cyber Elves to kind of create sustainable energy. That's a big reason. That was a whole thing that sparked the Elf Wars in, earlier, before the Zero games happened, right? But after the X series, in between those two, where there's a whole energy crisis, like trying to figure out how to make it work, and then a lot of bloodshed on both sides of the war here. So I'm just going to skip through most of this dialogue just because we don't really care too much. But it's like, I like the structure of this game, and like the mission structure definitely makes it more interesting than the X games. What I will say is that they kind of, what I miss about the original game the most is like how different it was. I think the original, maybe you could select like up to 3 missions at a time and do them in any order. And you can here, they kind of give it to you in chunks of 4. And then in between those chunks of 4, there are a few missions that kind of break up the standard pace. So it's not quite like the X games or the classic games, but it kind of starts to lean a little more towards that. So I do kind of miss a little bit of how different it felt in the first game, but I also I think it's worth the payoff for the difficulty change in this game. I think this game is a lot easier. I mean, I could even argue it's one of the easiest Mega Man games I've played. It's not like super easy. It's still a good challenge, but the first game I found really difficult, and maybe I just didn't play it the right way. I don't know, but I never fully finished the original Mega Man Zero. As a result, I got to one of the final bosses and just couldn't beat it. I tried so many times I couldn't do it. And yeah, their whole thing now is that Zero had left, and now they found Zero again, so they're going to bring Zero back. So it's this whole plot of like, trying to do missions for El Piso, the new commander here, and you kind of see how things progress. And there, like I said, there are bosses to fight. Most of them are pretty fun, as you get to fight different themed characters. It is a little different. Let me know in the comments below if there are boss weaknesses in this game, because I swear there aren't. My go-to is always just the Z-Saber and doing a lot of air dashing and stuff. And like occasionally the blaster when I need to do long range, but like that's what I always do. As far as I'm aware, there aren't weaknesses. There are elemental abilities you can equip when you beat certain bosses, like there's like fire, electric, ice. Those are the only 3 I got. Let me know if there are more. I might have missed out on them. I think you get the abilities based on how well you do in the mission. I could be completely wrong on that, but that's how I interpreted it. But that's kind of an interesting twist that I don't know if the original game had, but what the original game and this game have with the weapons is the fact that you can kind of upgrade the weapons. So, and this is kind of a cool feature that, the X and classic games didn't really have, is where you can, the more you use a certain weapon, the better it gets. And so like, for example, like we saw in the previous tutorial mission, I wasn't able to do the fully charged Z-Saber kind of earthquake move I was talking about. You get that by using the Z-Saber more and just upgrading it further and further. And the game will notify you. They have like, each weapon has like star rankings. The game will notify you when you get upgrades for those weapons. And I will say I got them very quickly, and maybe it's just because I retried a lot, and I think the upgrades save on retries. I got them, all the weapons fully upgraded very quickly. My go-tos were still always the blaster and the Z-Saber, although the others had some useful advantages. If there were enemies that shot projectiles, the shield boomerang could be used to deflect projectiles, which is really cool. And like I said, I think it's the chain rod, I think that's what it's called, can be used across like gaps of spikes. It's also good for like if you want to aim at a specific enemy like diagonally long range, like it works really well for that. So they all have their use cases, although I found the chain rod and the shield a lot more situational than just the classic Z-Saber and Buster. It's hard to go wrong with that. But yeah, and another cool aspect about this game and the original game is you can kind of explore the base as you go. There aren't like a ton of unique things. I wish there were more unique things to do. Like, this probably doesn't make any sense for comparison, but I just recently played Legend of Zelda Minish Cap, and like going into the town and like interacting with the NPCs, and they change literally every time you leave and come back. Like, I wish there was more. Like, NPC dialogue does change, and I kept checking all the NPCs to see if they had anything, and most of them didn't really have anything. What was cool was that, like, for example, there's a mission where you have to rescue a bunch of resistance soldiers, and once you do, they fill out some of the empty barracks in the base, which is kind of a cool touch. It makes it feel like more of a lived-in base and a lived-in world, but I wish there was more of that, Another thing to keep in mind is, like most Mega Man games, this is a short game, right? You might have seen my save file, and that was with retries. That was what, not even 6 hours, right? So it's a short game, but like, I don't mind that. I don't. It doesn't overstay its welcome. It feels like it starts and ends in like a nice pace, you know. And it's like, at least for me, it was a good challenge. I've played a lot of Mega Man games at this point, including all the X games, not all the classic games, but all the X games, which this game takes most of its core gameplay from. So at the very least, like, I don't know, it's like, I don't know, it's nice to be able to like not have an awful time just trying to get through the game. Yeah, okay, this is where the chain route comes out. Okay, and he gives me the shield boomerang back. So there we go. So you can see here, I'll just show him off quickly so you can see. I won't talk about the non-spoilers too much more, as I kind of want to get more into the spoiler stuff, but you can see you can like, kind of grapple along and swing around, which is super useful. And then the shield boomerang as well, which can deflect projectiles and be thrown kind of like Captain America's shield. So there's some cool stuff here. And the pixel art looks great. The game looks really great in motion. There are some filters in this collection you can use to kind of make it smoother if you're into that sort of thing. Personally, I like the pixel art the way it is. So yeah, CL here. I'm going to call her CL. Hopefully, let me know how you pronounce it in the comments below. I'm just going to like fast forward through this dialogue here. I just want to show you the mission select screen for the first set of missions so you can kind of get an understanding of how it works. But these games really do have a lot more lore. Like I said, like the X games have a lot of background lore, but I feel like until like some of the later ones, I feel like they really didn't have story as their main focus, you know? Whereas here it's like you really get a sense of how the story progresses from the first game into this one, and there are more cutscenes and events going on, which I appreciate as someone who likes story in games. It is nice. Yeah, so they're trying to... El Piso sending him out to march. There's this whole operation to try to take down Neo Arcadia that's going on. And it's interesting seeing it from El Piso's side of things, who used to work for Neo Arcadia, and kind of seeing his perspective on how he's going to structure the kind of the missions here. But yeah, let me... yeah, okay. Let me at least show you the mission structure here. So if you're familiar with the other games, you might recognize some of these as like they show like the Mavericks or Robot Masters at the beginning. I don't even know what they're called in this game. I assume they're Mavericks, but who knows? And they have some different missions here. I don't know if the red versus blue means anything. I really don't know. Let me know in the comments below. I thought it might mean difficulty, which for bosses maybe, but like I don't know. Like this guy, once I got used to his attack pattern, wasn't too bad, but I'm just rambling on at this point. Overall, like this game is really fun. I would recommend this game if you are a fan of the Mega Man X games for sure. I would try the original first. I think for these games, it probably is best to play in sequential order. Otherwise, the story isn't really going to make sense. I needed a bit of a refresher going into this, and there's some interesting plot points that happen in the series. I think it's worth following along the story, so definitely check out the first game. It's just tough to get into, you know, so definitely don't beat yourself up if you can't beat it, because I had a tough time. Maybe I just wasn't playing it right at the time, whereas this game just clicked with me all of a sudden, but I definitely enjoyed it quite a bit for those reasons. It really is a fun game in my opinion. I definitely think it's improved upon the original. I feel like it kind of goes a little bit too far back to the X series with like the mission select here, but that's such a minor nitpick. It really feels good to play. The music is also fantastic. I forgot to shout that out. The pixel art looks great, and the bosses are pretty fun. And the final boss as well is very interesting. I wouldn't say it's super hard, at least once I figured out the boss pattern, but that's kind of the appeal of Mega Man, right? You replay a few times over and over, you get used to the boss pattern, how enemies move, and you kind of do it. But that's going to do for the non-spoiler part of this review. I only want to talk a little bit about spoilers here with the game, so please definitely tune out if you are not interested in any spoilers for Mega Man 02 or even the original. I'm going to say no spoilers for the original because the story kind of ties into this one, so I'm going to give you a few seconds for spoilers. All right, so definitely interesting story implications here. Like I said in the non-spoilers part, I definitely utilize the Z-Saber and stuff more than anything, but I definitely like the story was interesting. I needed to, because I never beat the original like fully, I needed to kind of do a refresher to kind of get up to speed on you know, what was going on with the ending of the last game. So I kind of completely forgot about Copy X and all that stuff. Because then I was like, oh, why is like X kind of communicating with Zero in this game? Why is he kind of on our side? And then I'm like, oh, it's the real X. So then of course that made sense. And the whole Dark Elf situation, which I believe they hinted at the Dark Elf in the original game. I could be wrong about that. Definitely correct me in the comments if I'm wrong. But I feel like I remember that being referenced. But, you know, then it was cool to see, you know, actually get to see the Dark Elf. And I mean, El Piso turning made a lot of sense. Was not surprised by that at all. I kind of saw that coming. And once he was like, I'm going after the Dark Elf and trying to resurrect it, and I have to kill Zero to stop it. The interesting thing was Harpuya, is that how you pronounce the name of one of the original Neo Arcadia robot. I don't even know what they're called. They have a specific team name. I forgot the name of that team name. The green one, essentially, the one who rescues Zero at the beginning of the game. I still don't understand why he did that. Maybe it was just out of the sake of camaraderie. I don't know. Or like friendly rivalry. I have no idea. Oh yeah, so this is one of the missions where you got to rescue the soldiers. Yeah, the soundtrack here is fantastic. I think the original is really good too, but I haven't listened to it in a while, so I don't fully remember it. Oh, I have my sub-tanks too. Look at that. I got all my sub-tanks. I have to restart my weapons. Interesting. But and I probably have all my elves too. Look at that. I did not find all the elves. I think I must have found most of them then. But yeah, I did not find all of them. Definitely missing a few here and there, but I found most of them for sure then. Like I said, I used a lot of the sub-tank ones. I used the fill up the vitality one. I think I used the take 50% of the boss damage. Actually, no, I didn't, because the run where I beat the final boss, I didn't do that. Final boss was interesting. The Dark Elf phase, the final phase, was honestly pretty straightforward for me. The El Piso fight, like, before he's fully possessed by the Dark Elf, though, I don't know. That was a really cool fight, I thought. But you can see, I love doing, like, the short hop. Getting my Smash Brothers terminology in here. The short hop into the quick Z-Saber. I don't know. There's something really satisfying about that, and it works super well, even when it's fully downgraded here. So now that I'm more like comfortable with this game, I could just like blaze through it a little bit. And it really is a fun game. You know, Mega Man X is one of my favorite games of all time. Absolutely love that game. I've always loved the X games more than the classic series personally. And this game is a continuation of the X series, so like the core gameplay is like that. And I think it does some things better and some things worse. Like, I will say, I feel like the Mavericks, or whatever they're called in this game, I feel like are slightly less memorable just because of the mission structure, but I think it makes some of the levels more memorable just because they are... Oh, is there no way to do that without the chain rod? Maybe not. Just because they are, like, more interesting missions, like, with the optional stuff like rescue all the soldiers, you know, stop the brainwash soldiers, rescue the cargo, like, you know, and then pacing the missions with the in-betweens of like the whole bombing ship, and then doing the temples. I didn't find the temples that interesting. I get they were like a final challenge. Also, really appreciate this game not doing every single Maverick or Robot Master or whatever you want to call them for the boss rush at the end. I really appreciate that. It was just like the 6 that weren't the core 3 Neo Arcadia soldiers, whatever that group's called. Someone let me know what the group was called in the comments below. I looked it up the other day, but like the 3 and then the one ninja who had sacrificed himself in the first game. Remind me what the name of their squad is, because I'm glad I did. I mean, I had to fight them again, of course. I had to fight them twice total. The powered up forms I did not find super challenging. I honestly found those easier than the normal forms, which is a little strange. Maybe that was just me, but it was definitely one of those things that was like, I don't know. It was good. The boss rush was like as long enough as it needed to be. Of course, there's a yellow devil form, because when is there not in Mega Man anymore? And the final boss wasn't crazy hard. It was a decent challenge once you figure out the pattern, but I enjoyed that part of it. So I don't know. Overall, like, I definitely enjoyed this game so much more than the original. And maybe I'll go back to the original at some point, but it was so, I don't know. In comparison, I just found it so much more difficult. But this game has a nice difficulty balance, and it's hard for me to really complain about anything else. Maybe it could be a little bit longer, but it didn't overstay its welcome at the same time. So these games, I definitely don't like when they're super duper long. So I appreciate, you know, how balanced this game is. It's a really fun time. Like I said, I'd recommend giving it a shot. Well, hopefully, if you're watching this part, you've already given it a shot. But yeah, definitely, it's really fun. It's like a continuation of Mega Man X, so I enjoy it. But with that, that is going to do it for this review video. Overall, like I said, give this collection a shot. I mean, this is your best way to play these games. Get the collection on the Switch or whatever platform you want to. I will say they play really well on Switch. I play this game only in handheld mode, and I mean, they were originally designed for handheld, so it works out really well. So I definitely enjoyed it quite a bit. I would definitely, like I said, at least, yeah, it's tough to recommend the first Mega Man Zero because it's so tough. Maybe give it a shot. Maybe look up a plot synopsis. If you do that and then jump into this game, you'll be fine. And if you played the X games, you'll feel right at home here, I think. So definitely give it a shot if you're interested, if you haven't played it already. But let me know if you have in the comments below, or if you've never played these games. Let me know if you're now interested in picking up the collection. I'd definitely like to know if I've convinced you at all. Definitely let me know. I want to know your feedback. But with that, thank you again so much for watching. I will catch you all on the next video or live stream. And until then, keep on gaming, keep on mega busting. That sounded weird. Good.